meeting to order. As an opening remark, I'd like to recognize and welcome and congratulate the new chamber. They had their elections after their AGM, and we have a new president. Brock Harrington is the president. Jeff Hall is back again. He's the vice president. Nathan Fleming is the secretary treasurer, and Shelley Reimel is the past president. Business Advocacy Committee chair will be Cindy Clark. Trade Show Committee chair Cameron Sinclair. Business Excellence Awards chair is Nathan Fleming. Community Futures appointee is Jason Blank. And Economic Development Advisory Committee, Brock Harrington. Citizens Advisory Committee, again, Cameron Sinclair. And by way of Tom, we have all been invited to the fundraiser at the golf course on Saturday. It's a meal and a fundraising auction. If you need more information, Tom Zarisky is the man. He has it all. And moving down to 2.1, we need a motion to have a special meeting for April the 24th. We'll change our COW meeting to a special meeting. If I could have that motion, please. Lisa, thank you. And a seconder? Pat, is there any questions or comments? Linda, we're having the meeting because of the auditors? Yeah. And it has to be done before the end of the month. So we have the motion. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And if I could have a motion to adopt our agenda, please. Tara, thank you. And a seconder is Cheryl. Comments? All in favor? That's carried also. And another motion, please, to accept our minutes from our meeting of April 3rd. Tom, thank you. Seconder? Tara? All in favor? That's done. And we can move right down to delegations. We have Dr. Ram is with us, and he's going to talk to us about the new medical clinic that we're getting in Drumheller. Very exciting times. You'll have to push the little button with the face on it. There you go.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Council, for allowing us the opportunity to come and speak to you on this gorgeous Tuesday afternoon outside. I think it was plus 15 when we came in. So, as Mary Ellen mentioned, so we're here to give you a first look at what's going to be called Riverside Medical, which is going to be the new medical clinic for Drumheller. And I know I said Patients Medical Home, and that'll make a bit more sense as we move through it. And those are just some of the individuals that have been involved in making this process what it is right now. So I've done lots of presentations in various research aspects and conferences, and we always have to declare if there's any conflicts. So other than wanting to improve the health of ourselves and the services in Drumheller, there's no other conflicts of interest that we have. So I thought I'd start with the health needs assessment or health survey that was done in March 2017. It was independently commissioned, independently run by Abacus Data, and actually did hit well over the number of participants that Abacus Data was actually hoping to get, actually 2.5 times more. So we actually managed to get 1,306 residents of the Drumheller area. So just a little bit of data. It did run for just under 3 weeks. The general demographics of everyone that responded, it was about 75, about 3/4 were female, but there were the chunk of males there. And we had a reasonable spread as far as age goes, and this is based on information that Abacus was expecting on the various other surveys that they do across the country. So just some quick key findings. So it was very nice to hear that most of the residents of the community were actually quite satisfied with the quality of care that they were getting, whether it was outside or inside of the hospital. But of course, there were specific areas that they did have concerns with, and we're hoping to see some improvement. So wait times is something that is across the country, probably not too different here, but 81% had some dissatisfaction with that. The process of booking appointments, they had some about 66%. And then the number of physicians or the choice of physicians in town. 51% of the residents who did complete the survey, again, were satisfied, but it was pretty evenly split as far as resources and services that they wanted available to themselves here in the community. And it was consistent as far as this particular statistic came out across the gender and age And those without a family doctor in town were far more likely to be dissatisfied with servicing. And I think that can be a very obvious and reasonable point that was made. So by a pretty staggering ratio of 6-to-1, residents were more likely to think healthcare in the community was getting worse at that time rather than getting better. And most thought that there hasn't been very many changes or improvements, good or bad, in the last 12 months. 1 in 4 of those who completed the consultation didn't have a family physician in town. 72% of those who finished that day had a family physician in Drumheller, whereas the rest of them actually had family physicians that they traveled anywhere between half an hour to an hour and a half to see, whether it was routine or whether it was urgent appointments. The major things that came out, which mirror some of the items that I mentioned already, is 90% felt that Drumheller needed more physicians. A good chunk of the community felt that they wanted physicians that were living in town, had their families here, that they needed options, that they did need an extra clinic to actually provide either the time, the physicians, or the space. And they wanted more female physicians. And as you can see, about 3/4 of the respondents were female, so that probably ties into how that 70% was. For the wait times, about half felt that wait times of 5 days or less would be very acceptable as far as routine appointments. 29% felt 10 days, and then 14% 15. When it came to urgent appointments, 76% wanted to see them the same day, which I think is completely reasonable given what an urgent appointment means, at least for me, and what I think a patient needs from me. This was shocking. So 60% of respondents said they had to wait on average 12.6 days for an urgent appointment. So this was to see a family physician in the clinic, not to obviously wait 12.6 days to see someone in an emergency department. And this, again, mirrors a couple of the items that I mentioned earlier. So that in general, healthcare was heading in the opposite direction of what they would like to have as far as their health goes. So where does that leave the community? And by community, I mean all of us. I mean me. I mean the rest of my delegation here. We work here. We live here. I'm a patient of physicians in the community. So where does that kind of information leave us? So that leaves us leading into this direction. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what a patient's medical home is, this is the initiative that is hopefully going to be sweeping across North America and the country. So it's something that is sought for and looked at as far as all the provincial and national colleges, as far as the Alberta Health Services and the various zones and areas across Alberta and the rest of the country. So what makes up a patient's medical home? And some of this you may seem like it was more intuitive than anything else. So it involves a number of things. So one is patient-centered care, and that for most people makes complete sense, but it is something that sometimes is lacking, and that takes the form of whether patients are waiting to make the appointments, difficulty booking, or waiting to get the results. They need a personal family physician, and by that I mean they have their own dedicated family physician that is giving them that continuity of care, and whether that's continuing over time, whether it's continuing over different locations that they're in. So for example, from the clinic to the hospital, that is something that we know will improve how their health is going to be moving forward. They need team-based care. So again, this is something that has been starting to roll out in the last 10 years, and this is where the primary care networks came in, and this is where the province has initiated more of that team support. And this is not just in the hospital, this is also in the community. Timely access. So I think we saw some of the data and some of the respondents of what timely access means to the community. Timely access, the goal for timely access is same-day appointments all the time, every day, for your family physician. That is the goal. Comprehensive care. So it means a one-stop shop. So that's to see your family physician. That's if you need extra help and support, if you have someone that has diabetes or hypertension, that means everything is in one place, and it's very easy, very convenient, and more efficient. And I touched on the continuum of care, but that's being able to provide your care in the clinic as well as to the hospital and beyond. It requires ongoing education, training, and research. So as physicians, like most other professionals, we have to keep up with everything that's happening on a daily basis. I can tell you that it's very difficult, but that's what we signed up for. And we also need the support of the municipality, so Drumheller, Alberta Government, Alberta Health, Alberta Health Services. So all of those pieces come together as far as providing the support any clinic needs if they want to hope to be a patient's medical home. So probably wondering how many other rural communities have this, and they look and feel like simple points in order to make sure that a patient's health is going to be the best that it can be. But I can tell you it's a challenge, and it's very difficult to change either the mindsets, the process, or even the physical aspects of how a clinic is actually run and how a patient flows through it. There is actually only one. And this is actually a place that was probably one of the first patient-centered medical homes in Canada. It's actually been modeled. I was there recently, and they actually had to go up and make presentations up to the territories because they were using this particular clinic to model their entire way that they were doing health. And it is Tabor. And it is an absolute amazing clinic. The process, how they see patients, the manner of booking. They have same-day appointments for everything. It is a one-stop shop. They provide continuity of care. They have done quite a job there, and that was through all of the partnerships they had with the town, with the community, with the doctors. It's been recognized and recommended nationally and internationally. And it is the only one. And for now, it will be the only one. There's going to be one more, and we're gonna build that here. So I would argue that how much does Drumheller value health? I mean, like I said, I'm in Drumheller, so I value it more than just because I'm a physician. I value it more just because I have patients that I see could get better care, could get more timely access, could actually get more efficient care. I value it quite a bit, and I'm hoping that all of you and Drumheller values it just as much. So we heard from at least a good chunk of the community on, as far as the survey goes, on what they feel they need. I do plan to do a follow-up to that, probably in about a year. It's regular occurrence, whether it's in academia, whether it's in health, to actually do the needs assessments, to actually decide, well, you told us what was actually bothering you, what you actually needed to see improved. And obviously, if a year or two from now we repeat, if we haven't done much better, then at least we know we can continue to try to make that better. So the roots of it, so this wasn't an easy project by any stretch of the imagination. I can tell you that it's been about 4 weeks and 2 days since we went into the third floor of the Riverside building there. And in about 3 weeks and 5 days, it will be ready to go. So it's going to be probably the fastest, actually I know it's going to be the fastest ground up started clinic probably in anywhere in Alberta, and it's going to be very, very nice. It's going to be staged in phases, and if it wasn't for all these individuals sitting back here behind me, and then all the ones that are mentioned in here, it would not be happening. And I've leaned on them entirely for this time period. I'll continue to do so, and I'm hoping that when it is up and running, the community will see what a great job that they have all done. So, but that's not where we're going to end. So it's not just going to open up in that time period, and then we just kind of go along and run our business as needed. So things that are coming up, as I said, in order to be a patient's medical home, it has to be a one-stop shop. So in phase one, Ray Anscoff and Riverside Pharmacy will be having a pharmacy in-house in the clinic. So as far as that goes, as far as all of my elderly and geriatric population, no longer will they have to come to the clinic, get a prescription, have it faxed off, or have Ray actually go out and drive it to them. They'll be able to get it right when they come in and right when they leave. They'll be able to leave and have that all done right away. Other things that are going to happen as we move forward is, I know a lot of patients that I have personally, they are either single parents or both parents work all through the day, and trying to take a day off of work to actually come in and see your physician is incredibly difficult. I know that's something I can't do as a patient. So we're going to be extending hours into the evenings to start, and then potentially actually over the weekend as well. And I'll caution that's not going to happen on day one. That's going to happen through the next couple of months, or probably the next 6 months as it progresses and new physicians come and join us. The questions are going to come out, I imagine. These new physicians, where are they coming from? So they're all Canadian-born Canadian grads that are new grads that will be starting as of July, August, and September. So that's how those new physicians will be rolled into the community. And I'm very excited, and they're very excited. All of them so far that have come in for interviews have loved the community already, and we've interviewed them, and they're very excited to come in, obviously, and see how things go, and then decide how their forever plans are going to move forward after that. Something that we are very excited that we will be sending out this week as well is that every new venture needs an identity, and that identity in this particular form is going to be that of a logo, and we're going to have actually students under the age of 18 in all the schools in Drumheller and the surrounding area provide, or at least hopefully provide, their example of what they feel an appropriate identity or logo for this clinic is going to be, and you'll be seeing that shortly, and hopefully in the next week get rolled out. So I'm very excited to hopefully have a grade 1 or 2 year old as finish that up, but obviously it'll go into the group and they'll decide. So again, thank you. I appreciate the time being able to come in this afternoon to present this to you. And as everything progresses and we move on and forward, I'm hoping that I'll be able to come back and give you an update at some point. I will take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Dr. Ram, and thank you for your investment in the community. This is something I think this is pretty exciting times for Drumheller to have this type of care coming in, not just for Drumheller, but Drumheller and area when we're looking at the 33,000 people that we support. So this is something I think it's incredible. So, questions? Jay, comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. First, let me say, Dr. Ram, how much I admire anybody who's willing to pay what it costs to upset what is a very comfortable but unsatisfactory status quo. It's comfortable to some and unacceptable to most of us, and I admire you willing to take on that stand. I'm sure it came at some tremendous personal cost. The things I'd like to know is ultimately, perhaps not on day one, but a year after operations, how many physicians do you hope to have in-house?
So our hope and goal as far as the number of physicians is a bit of a moving number, and I'll explain that to you in this way. So family physicians, we know across Canada in the rural areas are lacking. So primary preventive health, we know, can not only improve the health of the community, but also save an enormous amount of healthcare dollars. So in my mind, we need somewhere between 5 and 9 primary care physicians that are going to be completing that clinic. Now, the second part of that is, I was born and raised in Camrose, and I remember growing up that if I needed to see an orthopedic surgeon, because if I needed to have surgery, I didn't have to actually travel the 50 minutes off to Edmonton to actually see them, and then 50 minutes back for the surgery. This was opportunities and services that specialists would come and do, whether it was in Camrose or Wetaskiwin. This is something we plan to do within the next few months. So not specialists that will be necessarily living on a regular basis in Drumheller, but for example, a pediatrician that could actually come and provide that extra outpatient, we call, service to the patients that we have and to the community. So the number of family physicians think will be up to 9, but then we have a number of different specialists that we'd like to come and provide outpatient service.
Thank you. Could you give me a few examples of what a doctor would think, just so I understand? I'll be asked a million questions about your presentation. I want to make sure I do a good job, not just having to send them all back to just have you answer them directly. What's the difference between an urgent appointment and a routine appointment as a doctor sees it?
As a doctor sees it, a routine appointment, I guess a concrete example is someone who has stable blood pressure, but they're on medications. So they don't need any changes, don't need any adjustments. They really just got to the end of the year and they need refill. So as a plain example, that would probably be a routine appointment. An urgent appointment is if I pick someone who's in school and their parents are deciding if they're going to be missing school as a result of having a cold, flu, pneumonia, what have you, then in my mind, that's an urgent appointment because I don't want my kids to miss school. So I want them, if they happen to need to see a physician and need any extra care or antibiotics, then I would want them to be seen urgently, not necessarily emergently in the hospital, but urgently. And as a physician, as someone who believes in a patient-centered medical home, either of those appointments should be same day.
And instead, the survey would say, if it's factually accurate, that instead people were waiting almost 2 weeks, perhaps when that issue may have resolved itself.
On average, correct.
Yeah, okay. Again, I just want to say thank you, and from my own family's experience, I know we felt incredibly cared for and looked after. The doctor who delivered my second child was our family physician for a number of years, but when they retire, and you see this across the board, we're abandoned. There was no succession plan. There was no referral. There was fend for yourself, and as a male, that means that I've taken an absolutely passive approach to my own health for at least 2 years now because I don't have a doctor anymore, and so I personally welcome the opening of your clinic.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it sounds very good. Certainly all in favor of it, and it almost sounds a little too good to be true, however. And I guess I'm wondering, if it looks so good, then why is there only one other? Why aren't there hundreds of these all across the country? Well, like, what's stopping that?
So the very comfortable answer is, like most things, everything runs on some kind of business model. So I was speaking with some of my colleagues probably while I was in Tabor a couple of weeks ago about this very similar question, and it's hard to convince any particular discipline that what you've been doing for many years, there is a way to do it better. There is a way where you don't lose that financial drive or incentive, and it is ultimately going to be better for your professional image overall. So that is a very difficult thing to overcome. And the second aspect that I briefly mentioned earlier is trying to retrofit any of the hundreds of clinics that have been running a certain way for all of this time is also a very significant financial hit that a lot of physicians aren't willing to do. We did see that over the last 10 years as far as the rollout of electronic medical records, and it's probably staggering, but there's at least a good 20 to 25% of Alberta that does not have electronic medical records in their family physician clinics. And there's been lots of support, both financial as well as IT support to help those clinics do it, but they still haven't. So it's a battle, and it's something that I believe the leadership of primary care, leadership of rural medicine are continuing to fight for, and I think they will win, but it will be a slow win.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what has been said. That congratulations and looking forward to this. Just back to the numbers. It's in your survey, 1 in 4 who were surveyed didn't have a family physician. Do you have any idea how that compares province-wide, or is that a good number, a bad number? Or?
If it was 1 in 10, if it was 2%, in my mind, that's always a bad number. So it's I think that number is probably not completely accurate, only because recently we found out that the area has probably bled about 10 or 11,000 people outside of what we believe we have been serving. So if I compare what our catchment area is for general services, it's around 33,000, I believe. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know from being involved in the primary care network, I'm the vice chair of this particular area, that according to those numbers, in the last couple of years, we've been servicing health-wise around 20 to 23,000. So obviously there's a staggering deficit in that number. So it's 1 in 4 don't have a family physician. Your original question, I think that's a bad number regardless of how it looks to the rest of the province. I wouldn't be able to quote, I don't want to guess on what the number is in various communities, and because there's various different aspects to go into play of how that number is. But either way, it's something that needs to be improved.
Okay. Continue. Over the years, we've always heard rural communities have trouble with attracting and retaining physicians, and kind of sounds like you got a magic bullet in a way. Is there a strategy, or is there a way to sell the community, or even things that we could do to help with that? Or
well, I mean, I can give the story of how I got here. So as I mentioned, I was born and raised in Camrose. When I left Camrose, I went off to Edmonton, and I did my electrical engineering degree there. And then from Edmonton, moved down to Calgary and did both the medical degree as well as a PhD down there, and completed the rest of my residency training program. I'll be honest and say, when I left Camrose, there was probably no hope of me ever going back to rural Alberta. In hindsight, that was just me thinking, my teenage brain, but it was something that was never going to happen. So moving forward, when I went into training, I had a very young family. I had a wife that's also in medical training, medical school at the time, but 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So when I was looking to do part of our mandatory rural rotations, I saw rural as something that I needed to be as close to Calgary as possible so that I can obviously still be there and be able to come back to my family. I had a colleague that did her mandatory rotation actually in Drumheller a number of years ago. So I asked her, and she said, I was heard how she loved the community. She loved being here. She lived here for that whole year and wished that she could come back, but there was other personal family reasons where she couldn't. So she said, definitely you need to go there. So I spent the first 4 days of my first time in Drumheller since I was probably in junior high, going to the museum, and every day things got better. So it wasn't just the fact that I liked the medicine more, that I had more interest, or that there was something else. To this day, I can't really put a finger on it, and we often talk about it around the dinner table, but I remember going back, or maybe my wife remembers me going back to Calgary after that first week, and she said, "You're smiling." I said, I think you're actually happy with what you're doing. And I said, well, I think you're right. And, I know you want me to be able to say that there was a number of different reasons or factors that you could highlight and you can expand on and say, these are the reasons why we need to attract physicians here. I think part of it is going to be, I guess for those of you that have seen it, like the field of dreams as far as medicine goes. If you build a clinic that the new generation of doctors actually want to practice in, and it's a way that they believe they can provide the best and most appropriate care to their patients, and it also provides a way that they can get that elusive balance in medicine, then they will come. So this is what we're going to do, and I believe regardless of how it gets rolled out, how fast, and when things kind of come through, I believe this will attract Canadian graduates of this next generation, and they will come to Drumheller.
Anyone else? Lisa?
Just like to applaud you for taking the initiative to move forward on this in our community. I was one of the 1,300 women that filled out that poll, and my own thoughts echoed most of what was presented here tonight from you. But I've got a question in regards to Tabor. Is that the only clinic Tabor has, or was that a community kind of grounded grasp to try to get more medical care to their community before AHS, or how was that?
Yeah, so as of right now, that is the single clinic in Tabor, and having seen it now, I can't imagine that you'd ever want to do anything else but work there if you were in Tabor. It was a very, very long process, so I had a brief but good meeting with the general manager of that clinic, and it was over many, many years, well over 10 years of them trying to figure out how they could actually get the partnerships, actually get the buy-in from the physicians. And I know that personally, having trying to work through and get physicians to change their mind on various meaningless things, that trying to get a physician to change their mind on something that important takes quite a bit of time. So it was quite a bit of time and process to get them to do that.
So was there any models in the States or in Europe that kind of are sort of based on the same process? Or?
Yeah, so there are various other things across the world that incorporate this patient's medical home feel. In every jurisdiction, Canada, we're unique. We can't necessarily compare ourselves to the US because we just don't have the litigious nature that they have down there. So it's a little bit different. And obviously the model and the level of how compensation is done there makes it quite a bit different as well. But if we take theme and the flavor of what primary preventive medicine wants to do across the world, then it is very similar in lots of different places.
Awesome. And I'd just like to say, on the extended evening hours, yay. I'm one of those working moms that when my child's sick, it's hard for me to get away from work to take her to see a doctor. So yeah, again, I applaud you and thanks for bringing this to Drum.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you're here, and I think it's a great idea. I'd just like to ask, you're talking about evening hours. Are you going to have like a walk-in clinic? Is that would that be? I know that Sylvan Lake has asked for a walking clinic, and they had a hard time getting it through Alberta Health Services, and it took a long time. So would that be part of the evening hours, or would it be certain appointments?
Yeah, so it would function more like a walk-in. That way anybody could come. And then we have a number of different unique ways where patients are going to be able to book appointments, and that would include seeing if the walk-in is busy and what time they should be there. And I don't want to share all the big secrets. I'll save that for the next time I see you. But there are going to be some unique ways that is going to happen. But it will function more like a walk-in. That way they don't have to actually book in to see their family physician on those particular days, at least for now. Everything is a moving target. So just because these are the best general themes and ways that primary preventive care can be provided in any community, every community is slightly different. So we'll have to see what community thinks about all this and move forward with what's best.
So have you got Amanda Hemming hooked yet? To come back to Drum?
Oh, no.
Anyone else? Well, again, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your commitment to our community. This is exciting times for Drumheller area. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone.
And we'll move down to an update on the Aquaplex.
Thank you, Your Worships. So last time we talked about the Aquaplex modernization project, we were just awarding the contract to Pearl Rose Construction. So we're a few short weeks away from the beginning of the construction. May 1st is still the scheduled date for construction. So just wanted to give everyone just a little update on what's been going on in the last 4 to 6 weeks. So Sunday, April 30th is our last regular pool day for the indoor pool. The pool closes at 4:30 in the afternoon. That's just normal time. And immediately after that, we'll actually start draining the pool. So the pool will be completely drained and ready for Pearl Rose to start on Monday morning on May the 1st. So
is Donald Trump coming to pull the plug? Oh.
It's not a swamp, it's a pool. So. No, that's that kind of backs them. So we are part of the modernization project is that we're going to, in order to redo the hot tub area, we have to change the men's changing room a little bit, or the showers and the steam room. So the women's changing room will be open and fully functional throughout the summer, but the men's we have to close. And so we're actually installing a temporary trailer with wash facilities on the first week of May. It'll be installed on top of the little pool deck. There's a little observation deck there, so we'll have that installed the first week and hooked up. We will be closed, as we've mentioned a few times. The whole facility will be closed for approximately 2 weeks. It's too cold at the beginning of May for us to actually do the work. There's always a bunch of preparation that's required: painting, cleaning, disinfection of the outdoor filtration equipment. And our goal is to be able to have it open for around May 15th, but it's weather dependent based on the evening temperature. So in order for us to paint the pool deck, it has to be warm enough at night so that the paint actually adheres. We have to fill the pool and heat it. So we're looking around that week of May 15th, so just before May long weekend. So the contractor, again, Pearl Rose, starts on May the 1st. So May 1st, we'll see a bunch of activity there. They'll do a bunch of temporary fencing, so to try to delineate between construction zones and where the public will be all summer. So the main access for their renovation work or modernization work will be the double doors by the washrooms outside the pool. So we just have a little bit of fencing and signage and stuff to go there for the public, so they'll still be able to use those washrooms, but at the same time allow access for the contractor to go in and out of the pool. So probably around the 2nd or 3rd, we'll start to see some significant activity there coming as the demolition starts. Their area for lay down, so their site trailers, whatever else they want to put out, is the old tennis courts. So that area will also be off limits to the public, so we'll have that fenced. For the time being, and until needed, the pool material itself, the Murtha pool liner, will stay at the water treatment plant, and they'll just be removing it as needed. So they're looking at probably an August start for the liner installation. So there's a couple of months of demolition and prep work with the liner installation in August. So we'll see what how that progresses along. Just on the town side, on the public side, we're actually adding a town page, or to our town page, we're adding or town website, sorry, we're adding a page on the Aquaplex. So give everyone updates on what's going on. We'll give them photos as we see the progress of the demolition and construction of the pool. Updates to our members who are going to be using the indoor-outdoor pool, and when we see a likely opening. And basically trying to just give the public enough information so they can kind of watch what's going on with what we're doing with that. So just one of the notes that I'd heard this from last time with our slide is that we've engaged a number of people early on. So Alberta Health Services has signed off on the pool modernization, so they're satisfied with what we're doing. So hopefully we'll be able to have a fairly smooth construction project this summer. So and that's it.
Thank you. Questions, council? Anybody? Comments? Nothing? Tom? Go ahead.
Yeah, so are town workers going to be involved in any kind of the demolition to kind of get it ready for or is that all so specialized that it has to be the contractor?
It's the contractors doing all the interior demolition, and that's more from just a risk management point of view. If the town did some work and the contractor did some work and something didn't go right, it's very easy to point fingers. So they're in charge of everything. Our role in it will be to install the trailer for the temporary washrooms, install lockers, install everything to do with the outdoor pool, but we won't be touching the indoor pool area.
Will they be closing down a portion of the parking lot at all to have ease of access to their whatnot that they have stored in the tennis courts?
We don't think so. What we think is that there's an existing gravel path that goes to the washroom area. So that will be delineated with a fence, and that will be used for access and egress with the contractor. And where that meets the parking lot, there's actually a no parking zone there. So we don't expect any construction equipment in there. We've told the contractor that they're going to have construction vehicles, that's what the tennis court area is for. So they're going to be further away than the public is. First rights are to the public to be able to use that, not a bunch of construction vehicles parked in front of the park. So,
Thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you. Moving down to 8.4.1, seasonal vendor application. This is a request for a decision. So Paul, you're going to lead us through the application, the yays and the nays of it. There'll be some discussion, and out of the discussion, hopefully there'll be a motion by council, and we'll be able to deal with this today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Your Worship. So we're back to review after last week's committee meeting to review the application for Rotary Park, Dino Donuts application for their enclosed trailer unit to be located on that parcel. I've provided to you some photos and as well where they propose to put the unit. What I wanted you to also know, and I believe you've all been provided a copy of the guide for vendors, which is produced in the policy flows from and into this document. So you've hopefully had a chance to review that guide to give you a little bit more background on how we've dealt with this in the past. Part of my work on this application as well was to go to the site, and I'll call your attention to the aerial photo that's provided on page 9 of your package. It shows the concrete pad locations that were originally created for mobile vendor carts at Centennial/Rotary Park, as it's known. Over the years, what's happened to those concrete pads is they've actually been extended. So originally, if you see the width of the walkway between the splash park area as you proceed toward the fountain, that area originally was around 10 feet wide. And then that was expanded to accommodate up to 3 vendors, and there were 3 concrete pads that were poured for that purpose. Over time, we actually added to that and extended the size of those pads. So currently, you'll see those dimensions. I actually walked the site last week and measured the dimensions on the northern vendor location as 50 by 10 feet, and then the southern part of the the designated vending site as 60 feet by 10 feet. The applicant submits that their unit has dimensions of 8 feet wide and 17 feet long. There are some recycling and garbage receptacles located on that location. You can probably see those actually within the diagram shown just in the center. That unit would fit wonderfully on the concrete pad location where it was designed and built for that purpose. Of course, the applicant does propose alternatively a location that's identified on page 10 as a photo. You can see an updated photo, as you can see the wayfinding signage and the community bench that is there. So that would be their preference, is to modify the normal policy that we would follow for this type of use, and then allow for the use of a generator at that location as well. So I guess we're in the situation where you received one application, you've got requests to modify the policy that we followed in the past. There have been exceptions noted previously where we did locate that unit closer to the Aquaplex washroom facilities, external to the and that would be just off the page on that diagram that I provided on page 9, on the northern part of that diagram. I think you're all aware of sort of the pluses and minuses for location there. There are some advantages and disadvantages for that location. And ultimately, it's council's decision to determine where they want to have this type of use. One of the councillors at our last committee meeting noted that it's probably worthwhile looking at this in a more long-term way, how we would go about administering the policy and so on. A couple of things of note just before I move on and ask for your questions would be just when we receive any complaints about noise, if there are noise complaints that are made, we would act under the community standards bylaw to enforce those. There was a complaint that was made last year regarding noise when that unit was located in proximity to the Sublime site, and it did move in part because of that noise complaint, but also just due to the applicant's thoughts that the location was not busy enough, didn't produce enough traffic and opportunity for her to function at that location. That being said, you can also see within the guide that I provided some of the restrictions there, noting that there should be no carrying on of business for a street vendor within 6 meters of an intersection defined in the Traffic Safety Act and within 3 meters of a building or exit. Certainly we haven't followed that to the letter in the administration of our policy in the past, but I just call your attention to that so that you're fully aware of that in the policy. That's really all that I have. Certainly invite any questions or discussion on that item in anticipation of your direction.
Council? No, let's have the discussion. And hopefully a motion will come out of the discussion. A couple of, just for me before we start, Highway Traffic Act. So by placing it where it's being requested, that's a violation of the Highway Traffic Act? I'll ask Paula.
My understanding is that the location would be within 6 meters of an intersection. So it's potentially, it could be viewed that way. Certainly we would want to adhere to the Highway Safety Act and any other policies that we're required to follow, including the Community Standards Bylaw.
So it could be jockeyed and moved.
It could, I think, and obviously it's on wheels. So I mean, if you wanted to modify the location so that it could comply with that, that's certainly a possibility as well.
Okay. And just one other, and you probably don't have the answer, but more of a comment. Is there such thing as a generator that only generates 75 decibels? We're talking at more than 75 decibels right now. Like, this bylaw has set itself up to fail. We went through this whole process with the Sunshine Lodge and the expansion with the completely unrealistic expectations of what they put on there. So this is...
And I can't comment without having actually measured what level the generator is producing.
I would suggest that we're talking around 200 or 300 right now. So it's not going to work.
We're probably about 80.
Don't you think so?
Yeah, 140 is the generation.
No. That's not the... Okay. I'm not... Jay, go ahead.
Thank you, Richard. Just a couple. Thank you. The alternates provided by administration are not requested. They're not interested in those locations. They're not level, and certainly it's a much bigger process to remove their trailer, as certainly removing it from every few days to drain their gray water, etc. Resupply is certainly still necessary. So when I look at this area, I think that inside the heart of what's going on in the spray park is actually a recipe for disaster. Those pads may have been designed for very small carts with an umbrella, the kind that used to be there in the days before. This is now a food truck sized trailer that would have impact on the sight lines inside the park, and really fits on the outskirts, I think. If those barricades that are in that picture are about 2 meters long, I don't see any issue why it couldn't be placed exactly where the applicants requested, that would meet the bylaw requiring it to be 6 meters back from the intersection. And more importantly, any noise that it was to, and I personally went down on a couple of occasions in its prior location just to get a sense of it. And I have every confidence that the street noise alone would drown out what comes from this business. Because you have to walk up on the business to hear the generator working, and so with this, just the street noise from that and the noise from the kids at the spray park, I'm not really worried about that unless they were in the heart of it, and that's why I want to see a motion that has the applicant's request as asked for granted, because I think it's the most appropriate place in the whole place. Now, is it going to potentially kill some grass? Not exactly the grassiest spot we've got there already, and yes, it's certainly possible, but the applicant is willing to lay down plywood and remove the vehicle from time to time to try to save that grass, I guess. So as it stands right now, I appreciate the opportunity that administration has taken to try to provide some alternatives, but I know that the applicant it wasn't discussed with the applicant. They were presented, and the applicant's not interested in those locations. And I would echo their argument that the request is completely within the limits, especially given that council has the ability through that business license bylaw to designate any area of any park or any street that's town property a vendor zone.
Tom?
Yeah, I echo some of that. I don't particularly like that location on the pads, kind of right in the middle of the park. To me, that's people place. I don't want a big cumbersome trailer sitting right in there, right in the heart of hundreds and hundreds of people, on weekends in the summer, walking through there and around there and whatever. I just don't like that area at all. That being said, the part on the corner to me is good. I don't mind it being there. I'm just wondering, however, if there has been a circulation in the neighborhood. I mean, this is one of the things we do at MPC, just to get a bit of an opinion or a consensus from neighbors. There are people that live right across the street from there, or kitty corner, There is a business right across the street that sight lines from the parking, from whatever. This trailer is going to block that. So I'm just wondering if we have done a circulation of that area at all in terms of whether this would be a good idea or not so good idea.
Paul?
No, we haven't, just simply because we were not clear on the preference of the location. In the case of a permit that goes to the Municipal Planning Commission, we would do a circulation after a decision was rendered to inform residents in the area or other users that this is what was happening as a permit is approved. So if council would like to see that happen, we can certainly do that.
Cheryl?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've looked this over myself, and I go to the Rotary Park quite a bit in the summer there. And I believe that again, as the other councillors have said, that the concrete pads in the middle is not the place for the trailer that we have, the applicant has. And also, when you note the people that are there, most of the people are further up in the park, not on the corner, not so much on that corner. They're up further, and they tend to picnic up further and travel around there. So I'm in agreement with having the location on the corner that is there indicated.
I would second that. Just simply, I mean, there's a hedge that grows along there and the fence too that also could be used, or in essence, to be a noise blocker buffer from surrounding communities as well. And really that far corner there, besides a lot of picnicking, really I think is underutilized in comparison to the rest of the whole project area. That is a main flow through on those cement pads from people on bikes and skateboards, you name it, throughout the summer, kids running. It just doesn't make any sense to me to place a larger unit right smack dab in the middle. So I would agree with the request to put it back in that far corner, just to make sure that it's far enough away that it meets the 6 meter request, and have plywood, as she already mentioned, placed underneath to help stymie any grass devastation.
Not only that, but wet weather removal too, so you'd be able to remove it without putting ruts through it. I think more to the point, the grass is going to go anyways, but hey, you don't want it ripped up to furrows. Did you have a comment?
Well, I just echoing a lot of the thoughts. I think this is pretty simple. I think that location is suitable, and yeah, the only consideration, make it 6 meters instead of 5.5 meters away from the intersection, I think is our own, in looking at the bylaw, that's really the only thing that is limiting us.
So if we have an industrious councillor that's making a motion there, that should be included in the motion, that it is in compliance with the Highway Traffic Act, and that it is set down on plywood. I think from what I'm hearing, I think that's the direction that we're going.
Yeah, I'll put that motion forward that we...
I'd like the motion. Go ahead. We'll take a little 5-minute.
Yeah, because we're going to have to write this out.
This is still an open council, but we'll wait.
No, but we need to write it out so we know what we're...
Just one more quick question of you, Paul. Was there any other applicants that applied for along the lines in that specific area as well?
At this time, we haven't received any applications other than those for Canada Day only vending, which would be located in the, I guess it would be the southwest corner of the Badlands Community Facility parking lot for Canada Day. That's a vendor area that we've designated in previous years, and it's been quite effective in getting people all in one place for a cluster of different vending opportunities there. So we're also working on those day to day here.
So there was no application from the Stuffed Kilt at all? I was under the impression that
not
one was...
received at this time. There was an inquiry made, but we did not receive an application.
Okay, thank you.
And just for clarification, within this is for one season. Is that what we'll put in our motion, for one season, or is that?
I think though this is a one-off solution. We're trying to be flexible with a person who's been relocated because of our renovations. So I think that's only appropriate. And if it turns out to be the best location, then I don't think we have any issue revisiting it. I don't know why council is this. Going forward, if I could, Your Worship, my issue would be that I was unable to actually locate policy on this. There is no heading for for seasonal vendors under council policy. There is no heading under policy under administration for seasonal vendors. I think we may have been doing things based on memory and past practice, but I think it's clear we do need some policy. I think probably anything we have had might be outdated because people with small carts may have been the way that things were before, but the food truck revolution is probably here to stay, and so we're more likely to have to find regulations and ways to make sure that we accommodate how that industry has changed, and make sure that we find ways for business to flourish in Drumheller and then get out of their way.
Okay, we'll put that back to administration. Paul? Tara, did you want to make a motion?
Okay, I'll put forward the motion for Dinah Donuts to be in the designated vendor area on the corner of Rotary Park as per photo A in the request for decision with the setbacks as required by the Traffic Safety Act.
And on plywood?
Must be placed on plywood.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, Jay, all in favor? That's carried. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.